Simple rhetoric is for simple minds, and the political scene doesn't need any more dumb people in it. The alt-centre are clown world's good guys. They outright reject political fanaticism on account that it ignores the human will to avoid suffering. So they don't fit into boxes neatly enough to be someone else's tools. Apologies for the noise of cicada beetles in the background today. Vince and I both live out of town. Well, hello again, Internet. It is Vince McLeod and I back again for That Was the Week That Was. Hey, Vince.
Hey, Bob. How's it going?
It's going pretty good, pretty good. We have had a very interesting week. To start off with, we have this absolute tragedy in Turkey and Syria, where there has been a 1 in 100-year earthquake. The first one of 7.8 and the second one is 7.5 on the Richter scale. It says that they have so far got 12,000 dead, expected to rise, and Erdogan goes to the polls in May. So there's all sorts of political shenanigans. What do you make of this catastrophe?
Certainly one of the worst catastrophes that's happened in terms of sheer number of deaths this century. What's the most interesting for me about it is the potential political implications that it might have on Erdogan's leadership, because it doesn't make any sense for the rulers to get blamed for natural disasters, but that has happened. Even if you go back to the days of ancient Egypt, the rulers used to get blamed for droughts and famines. If you look in Auckland, what happened just last week with the flooding, Wayne Brown got blamed for much of it, and people cover up their blame by saying that they're not blaming them for the actual disaster, but they're rather blaming them for the response. But that isn't quite true, because much of it is driven by subconscious rage. And so Erdogan, he's going to have to face a lot of this rage. It'll be a matter of whether or not he still wins the election in May. I think probably he will, because he has an iron grip on the entire system in Turkey, and a lot of people are voting for him out of religious sentiments. So we'll have to wait and see if the death toll goes up appreciably, and if it has any impact on Erdogan's ability to rule Turkey.
It's a strange month, Vince. Last week we talked about 100-year floods, and now we've got a 100-year earthquake. It really is. It's more than just global warming. It's something affecting the whole planet and society.
A lot of people feel like we're hitting the end stages of a larger cycle, and I think these natural disasters might be superstitious to say this, but it could be also that they're related to the end of the Great Cycle in some way. So I think we're going to have to hold on tight this year and just see what happens.
Well, I have a strange thing here. There is an interview in 2019 where a fellow says, he starts off, he says, in Russia last year, 400 people were arrested for things that they posted on social media. Obviously, this country, which is Britain, is very different. How many do you think were arrested in Britain for what they said in social media? The guy says, I've got no idea. So the interviewer says 3,300. So the guy says, really? Arrested for things they said on social media? That was in 2019, and now we have a fellow in America who they are trying to put in jail for 10 years because in 2016 he made this meme, and it has text Hillary, vote for Hillary by text to this text number which is false. And then he made this meme, draft our daughters stronger together. It is extraordinary. Clown world.
We're certainly in clown world, but that particular case of the man who made those memes is arguably different from the social media arrests, most of the social media arrests are complete bullshit. You see, Count Dankula was arrested and sentenced to prison for teaching his dog how to do a Nazi salute, which is complete bullshit. I had the cops come to my house because I told it's okay to be white T-shirts on Trade Me, which is also bullshit. So you've got a number of these arrests and police harassment. They're really just harassment of dissidents, the same sort of deal that you had happen in the Soviet Union. But this particular case of the man who made those memes, it's interesting because he really did, by means of fraud and deception, convince a number of people to not ultimately vote in the presidential election. So that is, to my mind, that's not in the same category as the people who just made off-color remarks and had the police crack down on them for unfair reasons. I think the man in America who made those memes really is kind of criminal because he convinced a lot of people to forfeit their right to vote. And I think allowing that sort of thing to go unchecked is very dangerous in terms of maintaining political stability. He won't be the first person to have been arrested for this, because Republicans did the same way back in George W. Bush's time. They sent around flyers telling everybody that the election date was actually the day after the day it was, and so they also convinced people to end up not voting. So those are very dirty and immoral tactics, and I think they are actually properly illegal according to American law, unlike the internet speech that people are getting arrested for in Britain. I think what he did was really a kind of fraud by deception. So I think the courts are not going to consider this merely a free speech issue, but rather a case of criminal fraud. So remains to be seen what will happen, but I don't think that man is completely innocent in this case.
Interesting. We are coming back to New Zealand now. We've done our overseas stint. I have two questions for you about one press conference. Chris Hipkins puts his stamp on government, but is it really a policy purge on the 5th of February from Stuff? And first, let me speak to you about this paragraph. The government also bumped up the minimum wage by 7% or $1.50. Do you have any statement from the Alt Centre on this issue?
As far as the Alternative Centre is concerned, for us, it's a matter of political stability that people get a fair deal. A lot of people on the right are saying that these minimum wage increases are going to make a number of small businesses go bankrupt and so on, and that the country can't afford more inflation. But these people, they keep saying that raising the minimum wage is going to increase unemployment. Now, our unemployment rate is currently 3.5%, and that's after over 20 minimum wage increases over the last 25 years. So none of the predictions made by the right about how minimum wage increases will increase unemployment have come true. So I don't believe the argument that these minimum wage increases will also increase inflation, because I don't think that they will lead to more new spending. I think they'll just redistribute what would have otherwise been profits paid out to shareholders that would go into investing in housing and so on, and that money will go to workers instead. So as far as the Alternative Centre is concerned, I believe that raising the minimum wage will lead to less suffering among people of the New Zealand nation. So I don't have any reason to be against it myself. I mean, $22.70, if somebody works 2,000 hours a year at $22.70, that's still only $45,000 a year. So that's still nowhere near enough money to buy a house in even the shittiest suburb of any city. So given that that's the case, I don't think anybody can say that this minimum wage increase is a luxury or excessively generous.
No, it's criminal for people to not be able to afford to have a place to live. But anyway, right, let's get straight on to the next thing before I rant. Hipkins used his first post-cabinet press conference after his new cabinet had been sworn in to kill the Radio New Zealand, TV New Zealand merger, pull the government's beleaguered hate speech legislation, kick the entire issue to the Law Commission, confirm that social insurance scheme will not emerge until economic conditions are improved, and the lesser-known biofuels mandate has also been nixed completely. Wow. Do you think he's going for re-election?
I think all of these measures that have supposedly been axed have been shown to be extremely unpopular among the voting public, apart from perhaps the biofuels mandate, which I don't think that many people really cared about. The RNZ TVNZ merger, I think that's been honestly scrapped. But I think the hate speech laws and Three Waters, I expect those to both make a comeback after this year's election if Labour win. The hate speech laws are being pushed by globalist forces, so we're probably going to get those regardless of whether Labour or National's in charge. You can see that in Britain and in Australia, it's been Conservative governments who have brought in these hate speech laws. So it's far from a leftist idea. It's really a globalist idea that I think we're going to get anyway. Three Waters, I don't think that National will push that through if they win this year's election. But if Labour win, I expect that Three Waters will come back in some form. So I think most of these measures are really not what they appear to be. I think they're just trying to win this year's election because Labour have been behind National on the polls. Apart from the Horizon poll that came out today that had National on only 25% and Labour on 30%. Apart from these extremely recent polls, Labour have been polling behind National. I think they understood that they had to change some of their policy.
Well, it's hotting up, Vince, last week we spoke about a capsule as big as a toothpaste lid being found in the middle of Australia. And now this week, the New Zealand police have found 3.5 tons of cocaine in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Don't you think that there's somebody somewhere really, really sad he lost his stash?
I think that somebody is going to end up getting executed by a drug cartel for this because that cocaine apparently had a street value of $500 million. So even by Clark Gayford standards, that's a lot of cocaine. And usually when something goes wrong with regards to drug smuggling and somebody loses a big shipment like this, there's usually consequences for the person responsible. So I wouldn't be at all surprised to hear that somebody had been taken out the back and dealt with on account of losing $500 million. $500 million, that's an incredible amount of money. So yeah, I'm astonished that such massive amounts even exist in this part of the world. And I would have thought they'd only exist in Mexico and United States. So that surprised me. I wonder if it's a sign of future things to come, that drug smugglers are going to target Australia and New Zealand some more. But yeah, certainly some heads are going to roll in criminal circles over this, I can guarantee it.
Well, Vince, that was the week that was.
Yep, cheers, Bob. I'm just sitting here with the cicadas tonight, and it's been a good show. I'll catch you again next week.
Old centrism is more a matter of wisdom than intelligence. As such, it does not attract followers on the basis of education or ideological fashionability.